Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Welcome to another video. Are you Graham Potter in or are you Graham Potter out? That is the question we're going to be asking today and we're going to be looking at, because obviously life hasn't exactly panned out in the best way to start off his Chelsea reign as manager for Graham Potter. It hasn't panned out in the way that he would have been hoping, and in the way that Todd Boehly would have been hoping, and obviously in the way that a lot of Chelsea fans would have been hoping either. A lot of inconsistent performances, many terrible results. It's kind of left a lot of people calling for Graham Potter to be sacked, and not just more and more Chelsea fans by the result, but a lot of content creators and neutral fans have obviously been calling for this as well, especially within the past in the past several hours or so. Obviously, following in the aftermath of their latest defeat, which was a 2-0 loss to Aston Villa whilst playing at home. Now, full credit to Unai Emery and for Aston Villa, because they played brilliantly on the night and they fully deserved that victory. But it's not good enough as far as what Chelsea are concerned. It's not good enough for what the fans are concerned. A lot of them turned even more on Graham Potter and indeed on Todd Boehly, who of course overall has the deciding kind of vote in this as to whether or not he stays or goes, and are calling for Potter's head, like a kind of weird Lord Voldemort thing. But no, seriously, like, I in the past have defended Graham Potter and I've said that I think he needs more time, and yes, it is getting a bit more, it's getting a bit harder to defend him more and more as obviously the results come in. And I have said before that I think Chelsea just need to ride out this season and see what next season brings. Obviously, this massive long-term project that Todd Boehly is trying to conduct is obviously still in the building stages. It's still in the early stages. And obviously, one of the things that he wanted to change was the manager, and he saw Graham Potter as the kind of a key figure in obviously this very long and ambitious project that he's got going on right now. But is it time for him to go? Is it over before it's even really begun? That is obviously what a lot of people are asking and a lot of people are wanting to know. Like I say, I personally thought that he should get more time. It's getting a bit harder to defend him. I still stand by that to a certain extent, and I'll explain more why later on in the video. Before that though, we'd like to remind you all to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things always and forever would be greatly appreciated. Also, get involved in the comment section below as well. I'm sure all your comments, thoughts, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, will make for interesting reading down below in the comment section on this particular topic. But from right now, let's get back to the video. Let's talk about Todd Boehly, let's talk about Chelsea, let's talk about Graham Potter and everything else in between. Let's get into it. First and foremost, we had to talk about last night, Chelsea versus Aston Villa at Stamford Bridge, in which Aston Villa were 2-0 winners. Great performance by Aston Villa, fully deserved. I thought Chelsea weren't too bad on the night. I thought they played some nice football at times, but again, they lacked a killer up front. They lacked a killer instinct up front. They lacked a striker who gobbles up chances like Erling Haaland. They just lacked that killer instinct. And then defensively, they were soft. Defensively, they weren't at their best. They were soft. The goals they conceded were cheap and easy and full of basic mistakes, I guess you'd say. But that's kind of been a little bit of what Potter was like at Brighton as well. And again, this kind of doesn't go in his favour, but at Brighton, he did so well. Don't get me wrong, he did so well to kind of be the underdog and punch above his own weight, so to speak, get them to where they were when he decided to jump ship to Chelsea. He lacked a killer instinct up front then. I remember often saying that Brighton would be a lot better off if they had a more prolific and consistent goal scorer up front than what they had. Because they created so much. They were attacking, they created so much, but they just didn't have that killer instinct up front. And it's the same situation again right now at Chelsea. Now, I get that he's not addressed that situation yet. He's only had one transfer window. There's been a lot of mistakes from previous managers and from, obviously, the owner in the past in regards to transfers. For example, the striker that they brought in this season hasn't panned out. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang came in the summer, a Thomas Tuchel signing, I'll have you know. It hasn't worked out, and hasn't obviously been seen in the squad since, and just plain and simple hasn't worked out. It was a gamble that I thought was worth taking at the time. I likened it to Mario Balotelli when he joined Liverpool many a year ago. I saw it as a gamble that I thought Liverpool needed to take. I thought for the money and for the quality that we know he does possess, I thought it was a gamble worth taking because maybe he had matured, maybe he'd got a bit more experience under his belt, that he could start proving his talent on a more consistent basis. It wasn't to be, and it wasn't to be for Aubameyang in this situation, despite the fact that I said that he would be an instant success, because he'd been an instant success wherever he'd been, whether it be Dortmund, whether it be Arsenal, even Barcelona to an extent. He was an instant success wherever he'd been, and I thought that that would replicate at Chelsea. It wasn't to be. That is a massive area that needs addressing. That is definitely a massive area that needs addressing, and Todd Boehly, and if Graham Potter's going to make it to the end of the season, needs to address that as primary number one target going forward in the summer. You've got Kai Havertz or João Felix playing there. They're not strikers. They're definitely not strikers. Havertz is more of a number 10. I think he does well in that kind of central free role, but he's not a striker. He's not prolific enough. He's not consistent enough for that striker position. I think he's kind of like a square peg in a round hole kind of thing with him. And Felix is more effective when I think he's a winger. And I think that him having to go up front, yeah, he looks good. He looks skillful. He looks talented. And he hits the post a lot. But it's not good enough when obviously he's not hitting the back of the net. And then you look at the other players that are around him in an attacking sense. Mikael Mudryk, he had a fantastic opportunity yesterday to make it 1-1. It was 1-0 to Aston Villa at the time. He goes through one-on-one with the goalkeeper, and he pretty much hits a pass back to the goalkeeper. It was poor. You expect better from him, given the fact that he would cost Chelsea a lot of money. A lot of money. And I understand that he's young, and I understand that he can still grow, and he can still evolve, and he can get better and everything. And, you know, he's still learning as a youngster, but for the amount of money that obviously Chelsea paid for him, for obviously the hype that he's got around him, for the pressure that obviously Chelsea are under, you'd expect him to bury that opportunity. And obviously he bottled it when it mattered most. Even looking further back, they lack leadership across the pitch. They lack an overall awareness, it seems. They just lack experience in key areas. You look at the goalkeeper situation, neither goalkeeper is apparently up to the standard. He's been playing Kepa a lot more. I don't think he's good enough for the world record signing of a goalkeeper. Definitely not good enough. We've said it for years and we've constantly said it. I don't think he's good enough. Mendy will do good for a few games, and then he'll have an absolute nightmare of a game for the next few games, and a bit inconsistent it seems in recent times. Looking at the defence, Kalidou Koulibaly hasn't quite worked out. Another Thomas Tuchel signing, built up a massive reputation in Serie A for Napoli, but hasn't quite managed to turn over that form into the Premier League. They missed Thiago Silva, his experience. His experience, and he's been, let's face it, he's been brilliant. To say that his age was a concern, his pace was a concern when obviously he moved to the Premier League and everything, he's been brilliant for Chelsea. They look a bit of a different team without him. They lack his experience, they lack his leadership, they lack his knowledge of the game. And I know that obviously he's been at fault for, or he's been at least in the team for many a defeat this season, or many dropping of points this season in terms of obviously this Chelsea side across the campaign. But he can't do it all on his own. He can't do it all on his own. And right now he's injured, of course. It don't look great. Koulibaly sometimes looks lost. The other centre backs that they got at their disposal, if he continues to play this back three or back five or however you want to put it, look lost. They've even tried to move Reece James into a more central role, the more right centre back position. I think for his legs, it might be a pretty good move, considering that he's constantly injured, but he is constantly injured. That's the only downfall with Reece James. He's talented, he's full of quality, he's creative. But of course, he's constantly injured, and that's one thing that's always let him down, and especially this season has always let him down. And Chelsea have definitely missed his creativity. They missed Chilwell on the left-hand side, they've missed him on the right-hand side for large parts of this campaign. Maybe moving into a more central position might preserve his legs a bit and might help him in the long run to get more game time at Chelsea and to be obviously more effective. That could be something to look out for in the future. But if you're relying heavily on him to provide your creativity, to provide that spark that Chelsea need to go forward, it's obviously going to cut itself out sooner rather than later. Can't be relied on just one person. And then you look at the midfield. There's a lot of deadwood in that midfield. It needs to be sorted out. Enzo Fernandez is an exception, of course. Came in January, being phenomenal, been great since obviously joining. But again, like Thiago Silva, he can't do it all on his own. He's got to obviously have the help around him. And I think that midfield needs completely ripping out. And I've said it time and time again. That midfield needs ripping out, and they need to inject it with fresh ideas, fresh midfielders, fresh creativity, and obviously find a balance somewhere. If you're going to go with this back three that turns into a back five and wing backs that push forward into the midfield, you've got to find a balance between the 2 or 3 midfielders that you're going to have in them roles. It's just got to be. It's just got to be the case. So they lack experience. They lack key players in key areas. That's why I've constantly said that Potter needs more time. That's why I said Potter needs more time. He's dealing with players that are there from previous eras, from the Frank Lampard era to the Thomas Tuchel era to now his era. He's got to try and shift some of the deadwood. He's got to try and regenerate this team, so to speak, in this rebuild. I think that with the amount of money that obviously Chelsea has spent so far during this rebuild already, I think he can afford it to have a little bit more time. I know it's not great, and I know that this is obviously going against what the majority of Chelsea fans will be telling me and saying to me in regards to Tuchel, but I've seen Mikel Arteta do it with Arsenal. And look where they are now. Now I get it. Chelsea are further away than where Arsenal ever were, and they spent a lot more money. But you saw what happened when Arsenal stood by Arteta, and eventually he got it right. He was given the backing, he was given the players that he wanted, he was able to work with them, he was able to kind of grow them and mould them, and eventually they are now in a title charge. They succeeded my expectation of what Mikel Arteta could do. I said to back Arteta, I didn't think he'd get them this far, but full credit to him for getting them this far into a title challenge. I'm not saying it will definitely happen with Chelsea, but I think that it's worth a shot to take. It's worth a shot to take. And I said it before that Chelsea fans grew up in the Roman Abramovich era of quick fixes and quick managers to take it. This is a long-term project. This is the longest-term project that Chelsea have ever gone through. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to work out. And for me, it will happen to a good extent with Graham Potter. I just obviously think they need to ride out this season. They need to bring in the right players. And if things are still about a year or so's time down the line still not working out, they're still having the inconsistent performances, the results are terrible, I'll hold my hands up and say I was wrong and maybe this was too big of a step for Graham Potter, as a lot of people said. Many said that he might have been the right guy for the job. Many people might have said he was too far out of his depth in this one. Many people might have said he needed a bit more of a stepping stone towards Chelsea before taking the Chelsea job. But in my opinion, you don't get anywhere by just sacking a manager. Or at least it's not long-term sustainability by just sacking a manager very quickly. I just think that with only a few months gone in his Chelsea reign as manager, having to come into a club that has had so much changeover and so much turmoil both on the pitch and off the pitch, I think that he deserves a bit more time in trying to get things right. And like I say, I think he's lacking the right players in the right areas. I think he's lacking experience and leadership across that pitch. I do think he needs to sort himself out. I do think that he needs to sort himself out in terms of maybe appearance-wise. I know that sounds daft of me to say, but whatever he's got going on right now, just for me, is weird. I think he needs to sort himself out in terms of what he says in press conferences and stuff like that. Because he's saying things like he's still the underdog. And believe me, at Chelsea, you are very rarely the underdog. Against Real Madrid in the Champions League in a week's time, you're the underdog. Against Aston Villa, you're the favourite. So I think he does need to work on sort of the manner in which he speaks and kind of some of the terms that he uses in press conferences and stuff that will probably get Chelsea fans maybe more back on side, more interested and more on board with kind of what he's trying to say and what he's trying to impose on the fans and what he's trying to say and stuff. But yeah, for me, I get it. I get that Chelsea fans aren't happy. I get that it's not panned out in the best way possible since obviously he jumped ship from Brighton to Chelsea. But I think in time it might work out. And I'm willing to say that. And I'm willing to see if anyone else out there is willing to also kind of support Graham Potter and obviously to sort of agree with me if that is the case. I'm interested to know what everyone else thinks. But the one thing that I will say on this, Potter is obviously facing a race against time. He needs to turn things around. The pressure is growing and all that. But Chelsea themselves are at a crossroads with him. Julian Nagelsmann is free. Now, it's said that he's going to be waiting till the summer to decide what he wants to do. Tottenham are allegedly circling him. Whether he'll go there or not remains to be seen. But Chelsea are at a crossroads because do they just cut their losses with Graham Potter and say that this was an experiment that we failed in? Because there's rumours that Chelsea like Julian Nagelsmann. Now, I would say from the outside looking in that they probably did like Nagelsmann from the beginning. But with him being at Bayern Munich, they probably thought he was a bit untouchable. Obviously, things have changed now. And since obviously he's gone, he's got sacked and Thomas Tuchel's come in at Bayern Munich and he's free. And with Tottenham circling around him, Chelsea are at a crossroads in which do they go and stick to their guns with Potter, or do they change direction and go with Julian Nagelsmann? It's a gamble, it's a risk, but if you want a young manager for a long-term and very ambitious project, a manager that's obviously been at the likes of Leipzig and Hoffenheim, been with them through projects and raised his profile in the game as a manager, and obviously raised their profile as a club whilst being with them, it might not be a bad shout to go with. It'll be interesting to see what kind of direction Chelsea go with. But for me personally, like I say, I think Potter needs more time. I think he needs to have a very active transfer window in the one coming up. Chelsea fans just need to ride out this season and go again next season. As much as that might be the wrong mentality to have. I mean, I know you're in a bit of a bad run right now, but let's face it, you've got Liverpool coming up on Tuesday. Jesus Christ, that could be either the worst game going or it could be the most entertaining game you go in. Both teams who are struggling for points, are in need of points to kind of save their season a little bit. I hate to think what the kind of scoreline or what kind of game that's going to turn out to be. It could be a very nervous and very awkward game, but there's a lot that's going to happen with Chelsea, of course, as this kind of rebuild continues. Whether Graham Potter's going to be there or not remains to be seen. I personally think that he deserves more time. He deserves, obviously, to get the backing and obviously needs to address that striker situation ASAP. The defence could do a bit more experience. The midfield definitely needs to be ripped out and put back together. So it's a very long project ahead. And it'll be interesting to see if Graham Potter is still there. And like I say, these are just the thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you think of Graham Potter and Chelsea? Like I say, I know I'm going against the grain here a lot in what I'm saying and why I'm backing Potter and everything. But I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of this whole Graham Potter thing? Should he stay? Should he go? I want to know what you guys think. What are your own thoughts, your comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it on this particular topic. I'm sure they'll make for interesting reading down below in the comments section. Otherwise, hit the like button on the way up, enjoy the video, subscribe if you're new, want to see more content like this. Both things are always and forever greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I'll see you all again soon in another video.